I'm delighted to be joined today by some brilliant iiE members. They're going to introduce themselves in a moment. For those who don't know me, I'm Camilla Sherwin. I work on the iiE team. I've been with the team for about 4 years now. So with no further ado, I'm actually going to stop sharing my slides so that all of the panel members will come up. And they will introduce themselves one by one. But I'm going to start by asking Anne Barrasso from Roythornes to start.
Okay, hello everybody. I'm Anne Barrasso. I'm the Operations Director at Roythornes Solicitors. My role also includes being the sustainability lead for the firm. We've been green accredited with iiE for 11 years now. That's 11 consecutive years, which is a really good story to tell.
Brilliant. Yes, and in fact, Roythornes won a special award at last year's iiE awards, didn't you?
We did.
For
yes,
being such kind of not only achieving that, but also doing so much work to extend and your influence over those who you come into contact with. Okay, next I'd like Matthew from Elanco.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Matthew Edwards. My role is the quality manager for Elanco Animal Health UK. We've been credited with iiE since 2021, and we're very pleased to get our green certification last year. And of course, I am the green champion for the business.
Thanks, Matthew. And a one-time award winner. I remember Elanco getting the Sustainable Transport Award, which we might talk about a bit later, mightn't we? But
we did.
Okay, and Sara from Conker.
My name is Sara. As you heard before, I'm the team leader and sustainability officer, green champion for Conker, a software as a service company. We work with FMCG suppliers. We work with data mostly. And we've been with iiE since 2022. As we joined, we've had our first certification as a remote company. We started with bronze and then we went up to silver and have been silver consecutively for 2 years now, always going a bit up in the points, in the percentage that we are awarded. So we're quite happy about that.
Sarah's very modest because I looked on your LinkedIn profile this morning and you had about 40 different roles listed.
Yeah,
so
well,
I think you achieve a lot and do an amazing job. We'll hear more about that shortly. Okay.
Thank you.
And Grace, who from Charity Bank.
Hi everyone, I'm Grace England. I'm Head of Strategic Initiatives and Innovation at Charity Bank. For those of you who haven't heard of Charity Bank before, we're an ethical bank. We're fully owned by charities and social purpose organisations, and we use all the savings that are entrusted to us to make loans to social enterprises and charities to help them have a bigger impact across the UK. One of my roles at Charity Bank is leading on our net zero strategy, and being an iiE member is a big part of that. We've been working with iiE for over 3 years now, and we've just achieved our 2nd year of green accreditation, which we're very excited about, and it's been a really brilliant process to go through, I think, for the whole organisation. So yeah, hopefully we can share a bit of the learning from that today.
Thank you so much. And then last but not least, we've got Steve Mack from the Newcastle United Foundation.
Hi guys, nice to meet you all. My name's Steve from the Newcastle United Foundation, the club's official charity. We've been involved in around iiE for about 2 years now. My role is head of compliance, leading on all safeguarding, health and safety, including areas of the foundation, and recently moved about 3-4 years ago into taking up the strategic lead for the environment sustainability areas. So it was new to me, and I'll explain a little bit of that later.
Brilliant, thanks, Steve. I know you've become a huge, a big greenie, haven't you? So, So we love your enthusiasm, and that really shines through in all that you do, and I think that's so important. Okay, I gave the panel of 3 sort of starter questions. The first of which was, what has been a barrier that you have encountered when implementing iiE, and how did you overcome it? And I think Sara is going to be starting to give the first answer to that.
Yeah, I can pick up that one. Surely, I think Conker is, as I said, a software as a service company. We provide our customers, which are mostly suppliers of most things you would find at your usual grocery store, fast-moving consumer goods, with key retail metrics, real-time visibility of things that are important to them, like sales, stock, promotions, performance, waste more recently, which we're quite excited about, and so on. And we are a remote company, completely remote, or remote first, we say, but in practical terms, we are almost 100% of the time remote. And so I think that's quite challenging. Our CEO is already naturally inclined and interested, as I am, and it's part of my academic background as well, into sustainability and environmental matters. So it was, it started quite organically coming up in conversations and so on. And we were already, trying to take sustainability into account in terms of our ways of working. But we wanted a more structured approach, like a proper plan, something, how do we do this in a consistent way, in a way that is measurable, accountable for, and so on. So fast forward to 2022, after being involved with the carbon literacy project, I was researching about it, trying to come up with a plan, environmental policy and so on. And I found iiE, and Conker decided to join them. And the most difficult part, I believe, was finding a way to measure things quantitatively, to have quantitative data for a team that is completely remote. So we don't have an office that we can, measure the electricity, the water, and all of those things. So how do you solve this? So iiE was really, really impactful to us in 2 ways. Firstly, obviously, on top of their resources and everything that they provide, their availability to support us throughout. Every time I had a question or wanted their opinion on something, it's really nice to have a person assigned to you, because sometimes, business can feel like a never-ending race, and you always have things to do. And there are times where you can't talk to your team immediately. There are times where you don't want to interrupt what they're doing to ask a completely unrelated thing. So it's really nice to have something to, book a quick meeting to, and being able to brainstorm. And more specifically, secondly, their efforts in finding a way to help us, quantifying things as a remote business. The home working calculator that iiE provided me with, which is based on a big study that was made and published in a paper by EcoAct. It was really, really helpful. It was so helpful. We started with the basic one, and then we iterated on it. So mostly we slightly adjusted a thing or two, but mostly we added onto it. At the moment, we have things that were not on the original home working calculator being taken into account, like each equipment of each team member, everything we have at home, and the emissions associated with their usage. Travel, because although we are completely remote company, sometimes there's a in-person meeting with a client that the CEO has to be there in person for some reason that is quite important, or as I can talk about a bit later, our in-person meetings, which is part of our social, also included in our sustainability strategy, which takes into account the social aspect. So this I think it was the most challenging thing. How do we quantify things and actually give the auditors data, accurate data, so that they can say, listen, you do all of these nice things, that's great, but on paper, what are your numbers? So that was, I think, the most challenging thing. And then on the other side, what can you do as a remote company? Everyone is at home. There's great things, great benefits that are quite obvious. For example, you don't have a commute, right? But what else? What else? It has to be, many more things that you can surely think about in terms of what you can do, what you can talk about, what you can improve on, and so on. So everything that we measure at the moment is lighting, so electricity, electronic equipment, everything that we use and the emissions associated to each and every one of our devices, heating, cooling. In our specific case, we don't use a physical server, we use online service. So we measure our AWS cloud usage and the usage of our Google Workspace, which, as you can imagine, for a remote company, we are always online. So obviously utilizing all of this, energy and the time we spend online is one of the ways that we can be accountable for what we do. Maybe we don't have commute, but we use our computers a lot. And obviously the business itself, that's why we take into account the cloud usage, which is our big usage in terms of the emissions of what we produce, because it's software, it's everything digital. And we also now measure, as I said before, our travel emissions. Our travel is very occasional, but it has been quite consistent, and so I've been able to gather accurate information about it, which is really cool. So that's the one thing that's really important for everyone, whether you're remote or not. And then there's a few things that we have been developing throughout time that I think are quite cool. So, for example, our environmental social project includes a way to try and incentivize not only a decrease of emissions associated with our work, but a way to also transfer this impact to our employees of personal lives in their homes, because they are at home. And in terms of directly Conker, we should account with their office, but we would like to, pervade a little bit more and have a bigger impact. So instead of, say, for example, only offering LED lighting to their office, to their room or wherever they work in, we offer it to the whole house. It's part of our annual poll. We'd ask, do you have LEDs at home? Or where don't you have it? Would you like to apply for, we will offer you LEDs for your whole house.
So really good examples, and thank you.
No.
And I know that it is difficult, and what we were talking a little bit about earlier is that iiE can be quite data-led, but actually ensuring that the policies and the good procedures and the good behaviours are in place or being promoted is as important, actually, and you can still get through an iiE audit even if you don't have the full kind of list of data sets that are in the criteria, because you can still do a lot, and showing that sort of good behavior is even if you can't quite measure it, is really valuable. So it's okay, brilliant. So the next question I asked was, can you give an example of an element of iiE which is running, has happened in your organisation, of which you're particularly proud? And I think Matthew and Grace are going to answer this one. So Matthew, would you like to start?
Okay. Well, I'll start first of all by talking about what has worked well, and answering with my quality hat on. It's been the processes that we've established. Setting clear goals and objectives, having an action plan that aims to meet those goals and objectives, and assigning actions to the appropriate people to carry out those actions and pull the data together. But then it's the review process, looking at the data that's coming back, looking at whether we're on track to meet our targets, and if necessary, updating our action plans, and being realistic about what we can achieve and where we can have the biggest impact. So but that's not what I'm most excited about. What has really motivated me is the engagement that we've had from so many people in the business, and the initiatives that have come from other employees, people who are maybe working on a project that has been it initially intended to have a cost benefit, but when we start talking about what they're doing, realizing that there are big sustainability advantages. So to give an example, with our products, we give away product leaflets. You know, it's a regulatory requirement. It has all the information about the product. Now, these leaflets are given away with a pack that goes out with each product, and the idea came up to put QR codes on the packs that had all the product information on. And of course, there's an advantage in we're using less paper. But actually, when we did the calculations and looked at how much paper we were saving, it was amounting to about 6 tons of paper a year. And then when we were looking at waste, we started looking at electrical waste and how that's managed and how we can improve that. And you know, and some of the folks in IT just said, you know, there's a lot of stuff here that actually we could just be giving away, donating, and there are organisations that, you know, can use the things that have passed their useful shelf life for us. So I think that's been the thing that I've been really encouraged by, is the initiatives that have come about since we started on this program. And really it's the iiE process that has prompted us to go in and actually start measuring you know, some of the sustainability benefits, the environmental benefits that we're getting from some of these initiatives.
Brilliant. And just out of interest, do you feel that staff feel they have agency to give you ideas, even if they're not on the normal agenda or in the action plan, and how do you collect that? How do you get that from them?
Yeah, just by having conversations.
Right.
So so we have a number of different teams around the business. Some work in the office, some work remotely. And as part of their team meetings, you know, I've been invited into some of them to talk about what we're doing, you know, about what investors in the environment is about, how it can benefit the company. And those have led to some, you know, really productive conversations where, you know, people are saying, well, actually, we're doing something over here. Do you want to have a look at this and you know, and see how we can bring this into the scope of our project work? And so yeah, it's really been the conversations that we've had within the business. But what's really empowered people is that the leadership team of the business have made it clear this is one of the strategic goals. And that is what has empowered people to say, well, actually, I want to get on board with this, and you know, it's a good career move.
Yes, yeah, brilliant. Grace, do you want to give your sort of thoughts on this?
Yes, thank you. So I know not everyone finds data super exciting, but I would say that I'm particularly proud of how we've developed our resource use data since working with iiE, both in terms of the data that we collect, but also kind of how we monitor that over time and use it to make changes. So why am I proud of this? 3 key reasons. First of all, because it's pretty hard. I'm sure everyone will agree. It's been particularly difficult because Charity Bank is based in a kind of shared office building, and we rent the space as well. So even getting the data has been a real challenge. And I can't take credit for this. Our kind of facilities manager has been very persistent and has managed to get the landlord to work with us. So we're now able to track all the data that we need, which has made a really big difference. Secondly, I'm proud of what we've done in this area because I think it's been a really effective way of engaging the team. This might be because we're a bank, so people tend to be numbers focused, I guess, but it's been really helpful to be more specific with the team when we're sending out communications and using specific data points to share kind of where we're at and what we're aiming to achieve. So yeah, everyone can kind of get on board with our reduction targets essentially and kind of see in real time what's happening. And then finally, I would say most importantly, because I think it's made a big difference, basically. So we've been able to reduce our carbon footprint now as an organisation for the last 2 years running. And I think a big part of that is because we've been able to understand our resource use and really focus on specific areas that we think we could improve, where maybe the data was going the wrong way. And I think the iiE calculator as well has really helped us understand how all of these different resource inputs feed into our carbon footprint and where we kind of can focus to make the kind of biggest difference. So I just really encourage everyone, even though it's quite difficult and sometimes a little boring to focus on data, it is really worth it. So yeah, I'll just encourage everyone to get that system set up and put the time in.
But it's sometimes interesting, isn't it? You put the data into the carbon calculator and you think, wow, didn't think that was going to have that impact, actually.
Yeah, exactly.
And we do talk about people not trying to not kind of get this real over focus on carbon emissions, because you mustn't forget, like we were talking before we started, about water, looking at conserving water, but it is, it's a useful tool. Just quickly on your data, are you now getting that data metered specifically for you, or is it apportioned as part of the bill, which I know landlords are often kind of don't like to reveal too much information, do they?
Yeah, it's a mixture. So our electricity, we do have a separate meter, so that's been really handy. Our gas and water is kind of a portion, so we have kind of 2/3 of the building, so we're able to get the kind of readings and data for the whole building, and then we kind of apportion 2/3 of it. So not perfect, but it's I guess the best we can do in the building.
And that's it, isn't it? And I think that's another point to bring out, is that the iiE program is very much one of continuous improvement, and so you do what you can and then keep sort of, I don't know, nibbling away at things that you don't feel are how as clear or as perfect as they could be, not perfect, but good as they could be, and so that keeping going and keeping the conversation going with those your closest, those who will make a difference if they make the change, is really important. But you do have to have some resilience, don't you, to keep going. So well done. Right, now on to our next question was, how have you got your colleagues to support your iiE aims, which is a really big part of the program, and this kind of the behavior change element of it is really important, because you can put in place all the policies you want, but if people actually don't act on them, then it all comes to naught. So Steve, do you want to talk about that first? We've got Steve with us, or is he bounced out? Well, until he comes back, I'll see if Anne, could you take that on?
Of course. So for us, the first point was to get the board on board, basically, because we needed that commitment from the board that they would lead, and then it would follow through into the staff. And so that gets talked about at board meetings. Sustainability is on the board meeting agenda. And because, of course, you need to talk about investment for some projects, some things do need significant investment, and therefore it's gathering data. Data's been spoken about quite a lot, but getting all the stats to get that approval for that investment, then the commitment is there, definitely there. The other thing is that I found is you can't do it all on your own. You need people around you, and we very quickly set up our own green team internally, and that was to energise the projects day to day, speak to their individual offices about what's going on. But the other thing about them is they're self-elected. So, there's no process. They just come forward and say, really love to get involved with that. Can you tell me a bit more about it? And they dip in and out. Some people are more committed than others. Some people can give more time than others. And of course, some people have different interests, but that makes it a great working party. The thing is, specific actions need to follow, and we're lucky we have a great staff intranet, so we can post lots of information. We run small competitions sometimes. We run challenges across different offices, maybe on printing. Let's have a printing competition and see how we all do. It's just trying to get it into people's mindsets that this is all going on and they can be as involved as they wish to be, really. And we find that friendly competition is always a good way to get people engaged.
I think that's so right, isn't it? And having lots of entry points. So often people respond really, they get a very, waste is a very emotive area, isn't it? So if you talk about sort of people get into recycling, if you talk about litter or do a litter pick, people often feel that that's an easy way to get involved in doing something good for the environment, even if ultimately you want them to be choosing making much more sustainable choices in their procurement. Sometimes you have to start at that very easy sort of easy access point. Okay, so one of the next sort of questions I'd like to ask people, and I think if we just sort of get one answer from across the panel, was about sort of time commitment, because that's another sort of challenge that I think all green champions face. And how do you incorporate what you do to meet the requirements of iiE into your working week? Do you set aside specific time, and how much time is that, or is it just part of your ongoing sort of weekly tasks?
For me, it is part of my weekly tasks. I don't set aside any specific time. Perhaps we have a green meeting every couple of months. Obviously, from that, we might do some extra work. We might look at the action plans, but it is really just part of the day job.
Yeah.
And that's the same for the whole green team, really.
Yeah, okay. And your systems, I suppose you've been doing it for so long now that the sort of systems, the measurement systems, and getting the meters read monthly, or the data, getting I think meter reading is almost easy. It's getting the transport data, isn't it? That's a real challenge. Getting that sort of the mileage and what the car type is, and who was doing what, and how many miles they were traveling. That is, once you've got the sort of utilities under your belt, then you've got to tackle the transport data. Is that kind of easy for you?
No, transport is the biggest challenge for us as a firm,
Right.
and I'm sure it's probably the same for many others.
Any nodding heads? The other panel members.
So that's an ongoing situation. We're doing it as part of our carbon emissions, and we can see where our biggest users are from that. So that's something to tackle. But we don't always have the correct system to help us. So some of it is a manual job, which then again takes up a lot of time for the finance team, who keep all the expense claims, for example. Yeah. So I suspect it's not just Roythornes that have that challenge.
I think that's right. We'll go back to transport in a moment, unless you might actually have something to say about transport as well, and certainly it's something I want to sort of unpick. But we were just talking about how how have you got your colleagues involved to support iiE? Have you had some specific initiatives?
No, I think it's it does what it says on the tin. We started a few years ago, real entry level coming into this, and I didn't have a clue what I was doing whatsoever. And my first thought was, right, I've got to be in it to do this. I've got to be the champion myself, but I can't do it myself. I need a team around us. So, like other people on the call, the first thing I've done was, one, reach out for help. Two, get in touch with Invest in the Environment, because the framework they provided, I didn't know where to start. I didn't know what I was doing. And with regards to the action plans, it gave me a real heads up to bring a team together, green team champions, like everybody else calls them, and to say, look, what areas are we going to look at with regards to travel and transport and waste, and what do we do? We moved from being in St. James's Park building with a paper bucket in the corner where we put some paper in. That was about the limit of our recycling, environment and sustainability approach. Right. To mapping out and working with partners like Invest in the Environment and obviously Smart Carbon to try and educate the staff what we're doing, bring the staff along with the journey, and sort of lead by example. Obviously the club, the badge, the one club, one city, the Newcastle Foundation has to be seen to be doing things in the right way. and obviously attracting new people to come into the organisation. I mentioned a couple of weeks ago, and speaking with colleagues, we're now getting people ask us at interview stage, what are you doing in the field of environmental sustainability? So a lot of people are coming into the business, and the first thing I do was get a hold of them, get them a headlock and tap into their knowledge. So that's brilliant. We're all at this journey together, and it's about sharing off each other. You mentioned there about the transport. Like it was a real small stepped approach for us. So the first year we just calculated some, average data, and then we broke that down to small, medium, large cars. And then this year we brought that down to small, large, medium, electric, hybrid, petrol, diesel. So I couldn't have done that 2 or 3 years ago, but obviously learning off partners and other support agencies and platforms we've got, I've now learned how to break that bit of data down. And if you had said that 3-4 years ago, I would have probably run a mile. But yeah, so it's all about
very sustainable transport, though, Steve.
Yeah, obviously, yeah, or I would have just walked. But yeah, so it was all about. It's all for us. It's like reaching out, getting support. We don't know it all, and asking other partners we're involved with, like what are they doing in the field. Sharing's caring, I suppose, is what we like to do.
Yeah, there's lots of points to pick up on there, which are brilliant. One is, and actually, I think Grace mentioned it as well. Oh no, or was it? I think no, it's Sara. We really hope that at iiE you all feel that your iiE advisor is part of your sustainability team and somebody you can ask the difficult questions to, the nutty ones you can't quite unravel. And we try and really develop that relationship. We sort of because we really want to support our members to it's the doing that's important. It's and we really want people to get through the program and find it is a bit of a, when you first join, it is a bit of a woof, it's a lot to take on, isn't it? But we really want to try and guide people through it and handhold. And then the other thing, I wondered, did you take the Green Champion training? Am I right in saying, did you do that, Steve?
Yes, yeah, done that. Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, I mean the whole step process and support with the nominated environment, like member supporting us and me myself looking out and reaching and people directing us to the correct training, and it's all been superb. The support network behind this, I couldn't have done this, and we wouldn't be where we would be without the iiE support. So it's been, for me, it's been absolute superb. Not only the tools and the resource to use, but the personal approach, and then linking us with other like-minded organisations has been really positive as well.
Oh, brilliant. And actually another point I wanted to pick up on what you said is that you use the Smart Carbon tool, don't you, which has been, and Smart Carbon are our partners. They provide a carbon calculator, which is a rather more complicated, or more complex and more sophisticated than the iiE carbon calculator. So it allows those organisations who are starting to go further into developing their Scope 3 emission picture to really get to grips with that. And if anybody's interested in finding out more about Smart Carbon, please ask your iiE advisor. Right, just going back to transport, because it is certainly it is a really difficult nut to crack. I wondered if anybody had some examples of initiatives they've put in place in their organisation which have helped to reduce their transport emissions, or projects that they've tried. I think there is something at Matthew was something at Elanco. Well, Elanco's done quite a lot, I know.
Yeah. So we've tried various things. Some have been more successful than others. I think some of the biggest changes that have happened in our transport are the things that are enabled by government tax policy. Things like the tax incentives for electrifying the company fleet. Car salary sacrifice schemes, cycle to work. So we've sort of embraced all of these, and certainly in terms of reducing our carbon emissions, these are the things that are having the really big impact in reducing our the Scope 1 emissions from our business. But when it comes to changing individual behaviours, how people choose to get to work, I think that's the tough nut to crack. And I think if you're going to, I think if you start off with an expectation that you're going to get everybody to walk into work on a cold, wet January morning, you're probably going to setting yourself a very difficult target. So I think we've tried lots of different things. A lot of that is around making it as easy as possible for the people that do want to cycle to work, choose to use public transport. So making sure we've got facilities on site for secure bike storage, places for people to leave their wet clothes, changing facilities, and that's part of it. Just enabling as far as we can the opportunities for people who choose to use sustainable transport to get to work. But we've also tried to motivate that. So we ran a summer travel competition, and when we were thinking how to actually measure this, what do we how are we going to set the right goals for people, and we decided not to actually measure how much transport that they are or how many miles they're walking. So we just made it sort of fairly informal and encourage people to send in their stories of their experiences of using other forms of transport. So the competition was basically invited people to send in their accounts of using public transport, and so it was assessed partly on how much effort people made, but also the stories that they sent in, which went into our newsletter. So the competition, there were prizes, which were hampers of sustainable hampers of food, and they were issued based on the entertainment value of the stories that they sent in. But it was great because over the 3 months that we ran this last year, we had some great stories to put into the sustainability section of our newsletter. But I think it certainly did encourage people to get on their bikes more. It encouraged a bit of conversation around the office. But if I'm honest, it didn't. If I was pressed to say, has this changed behaviours? I don't know. We didn't see a measurable change over the following year, but it certainly engaged people in the discussion.
And I think sometimes it is that nudge sort of approach, isn't it? And it is a really difficult way to create change. I've got some good examples from other iiE members, but before I sort of talk about them, have any of the others put your hand up, panel members, if you have another example you'd like to share? Okay, shall I talk? I'll talk about some of the examples, which I think are really great examples. I had one simple change that one member made so that their staff could use the local bus. Was they just slightly shifted their working hours so that to tie in with bus timetables, which is such a simple thing to do, but but they they couldn't get there for the 9 o'clock start, but they could for a 9:30 start or 9:15 start. So it was a really simple conversation, but something that the employee found the confidence to express, rather than just thinking, oh well, I can't use the bus because it doesn't fit with the timetable. So that was quite an interesting one. I had another member who have tried to encourage car sharing, and sometimes a barrier to car sharing and lift sharing into work is that people say, well, if I get that emergency call, I can't get back home to, back to the school to pick up the ill child from school and take them home, which is an issue for working parents sometimes. And so the company has committed to paying for a taxi for whichever whichever employee would be left sort of high and dry by the other employee, the other person in the lift share going off to either to go and pick up the child. Which I thought was quite a useful thing. And then my third example, and I think this is on the website, is a veterinary company who adopted a policy which rewards the use of active travel or public transport. And it does cost them, but they see that as a good cost to bear in terms of improving staff well-being, promoting active travel, supporting the use of public transport. So people have to show that they've used public transport, and it's not an absolute wholesale 100% switch. They have to meet a certain threshold, which is sort of 50% or something like that, or 60% of show that they've made a certain number of journeys per week or across the month using these different sort of low carbon transport options. But just by having that management buy-in again and supporting a change is really changing behaviour. Matthew.
Yeah, and I was just wanted to share another initiative that has had some success, and that is we created a country map. So we have employees that are located all around the UK. Some are office based, some are field or hybrid. We created a map on SharePoint of where people could choose to pinpoint their location if they were willing to car share. So we actually had about half the business sign up to say, look, I'm willing to car share. This is where I live. And although that probably hasn't changed how people travel into the office, but certainly when it comes to business meetings, events, conferences, it's been quite effective, and we do find that the amount of car sharing is far greater. People don't like turning up to events by themselves. They far prefer
that's a bonus,
turning up with somebody else. So yeah.
Sara.
This is something that occurred to me just in the last few seconds. Conker didn't used to be a fully remote company until, well, it was, the big change was kickstarted by the Big C event, the COVID pandemic, and everyone kind of unanimously sort of decided it would be so nice if we could, stay remote. So that obviously that was a change in the commutes, but the indirect change was before, when people had to come to the office every day or almost every day. Sometimes you're just tired. You don't want to make a different decision. You want to think, what do I need to do to change my schedule or whatever to go to the bus or whatever that might be. So your instinct is to, just grab the car and go, right? I wasn't working in Conker at that time, but I know this was happening. And nowadays, because we have such, intentional in-person meetings when they happen and they are part of our social and environmental program that wants to take into account, obviously, the emissions, but also people's mental health and the social connection that they need. So we decided that we are meeting once per quarter all together with a bit of a mix between business meetings, which include the sustainability discussions in person, the more formal, structured ones, and fun social time together. But now, because we are more flexible, people can stay at home. If you are near in the area, you can also pop into somewhere or someplace. But because when we move outside the house, it's such an intentional choice, we now always plan to see what's the best way I can do it in the most sustainable way. The very, very, very rare instances where anyone would use a car is always a car share for a very specific important meeting that has a bit of a weird location or a weird schedule, and everyone would have to pick up a different type of public transport, whilst we can just grab one car and pick up 3 or 4 people and go there. Or we all plan our travel ahead and, use all public transportation, including our CEO, although he has a leased electrical car for the company. It's the only company vehicle.
Right.
So I think sometimes, obviously, we have a very specific, example. Just to say that sometimes taking into account this social aspect can also impact on sustainability in terms of environmental impact, because people, if they feel that there is flexibility and the example comes from above, and it's goodwill to to be flexible and to give away a little bit of leeway, they will also do the same. Okay, I'll also make the effort to be a bit more intentional because they also made this for me, and so on. So just to put that perspective a bit out there.
Yeah. And you have your hand up.
Just picking up on Matthew's point about people not wanting to go to events on their own, we also, and I don't know if the others do, offer extra expenses for car sharing. So the mileage is increased.
And in fact, that is something through HMRC, isn't it? It's recommended that you add 5p per mile for when a car journey is shared for the driver when reimbursing. And there's a 20p per mile reimbursement for anybody going to a meeting by bike, which not a lot of people know about as well. So including that in your travel policy can maybe incentivize people somewhat. So yeah, no, it's there are lots of sort of little things to try and nudge behavior change. One actually other thing that you touched on, and is when collecting your data, is you really need to have the finance team on side, don't you? And trying to get to them about how they ask for the data from, so you get the expense claim system is adapted so that it collects the CO2 emission data, or what will become CO2 emission data, or is useful for that, is another kind of one of the sort of elements of continuous improvement, trying to improve that we were talking about. You start off with very basic data, and then it builds and builds and builds. As Steve.
Just very simply building on that, obviously all staff claim the mileage. So we introduced the new forms to say, what vehicle are you driving? Is it hybrid? Is it electric? And if the forms weren't filled correctly, perhaps they might not get their mileage claim. Once you start to hit them with the money, they were like, yeah, that was filled in correctly. So it was a massive job, easily done to staff, because then they got their cash. So that was quite good.
Right, there you go. In fact, yesterday I was hearing a supplier, it was Silverstone, and we were talking about how they get hold of their third party, their sort of scope 3 emission data from their suppliers, and they won't pay their invoices until they've had their emissions data from their suppliers, which I thought was quite an interesting sorry, but yes, but for those who they're paying the bills for, which I thought was quite an interesting way of lever to use in terms of getting this wider data from the myriad of people that you have to try and convince to give you scope 3 emissions data. Just on, well, I think we've got time for two sort of quick questions, and then I want to finish with some final top tips. One was, have any of you been involved in sort of good biodiversity projects? Because that's an area which is obviously, companies can really get involved in, or organizations can really get involved in, and it gives a great opportunity for this team engagement sort of type thing. And then my other question was a little bit about reporting and who's doing that sort of thing. Right, Grace, I can see you've got your hand up.
Yeah, just a small example. So one of the organisations that Charity Bank has provided a loan to help them grow is Kent Wildlife Trust, which is the wildlife trust in the area in which Charity Bank is based. And it was a few weeks ago now. We organised a visit for the whole team to go and visit Kent Wildlife Trust as part of the kind of Net Zero Working Group initiative. And we had the team there put on, they called it a wildlife safari, which was brilliant because it kind of gave the team a chance to first to take a bit of a step out of the working day, which everyone appreciated, but also just to learn about like the local habitat and kind of see what's happening in the local area in terms of biodiversity and what the Kent Wildlife Trust are up to. And we're now looking to build on that relationship and see if we can buy some of our carbon offsets through Kent Wildlife Trust, which they're developing over the next year or so. So yeah, there's things like that are quite easy to organise, and we kind of like doing staff engagement days at least once a year in any case. So it was great to be able to tie the two together of kind of helping raise awareness about the kind of local environment and getting people a bit more informed in terms of what we're trying to achieve.
Brilliant. Yeah, very good. Now, so I'm Steve. I can see we've got brilliant response to my question, so I'll move on to Steve. If you want to say something.
Not so much biodiversity, but I think for me, it's a little bit about know your strength. And our strength is in this area is football. So we set up a scheme to work in areas of, low socioeconomic deprived areas where kids might not have the right footwear to access and play football. So we've got a massive boot recycling scheme where we get all people who are perhaps grew out of size of football boots, we bring them back into the foundation and the academies, and we'll give them a bit of a clean, a scrub up, and then we give them back to the community. So getting involved with that is getting the players involved, getting the academy and then 21 players involved. So it's getting different areas of the club and the foundation, the academy all together for a common goal, and that's to get more kids playing football. So that boot recycling scheme has been a big success. Now to the point where we're getting first team players are given their boots to give out. So you've got kids in our, in our area, local community who are wearing football boots that the players perhaps wants more. So it's a real good angle of know your strength, what you're good at, and build on that and look to bring a scheme where people will get on board with.
Yeah, and I think that's brilliant because it kind of clicks into the healthy living agenda, doesn't it, as well, and keeping health, being active and things like that. And I think those certainly in my local town we have a community football club, and they are so brilliant because week after week hundreds of children go and sort of play footy, girls, boys, everyone, and there's a walking football team too. So just keeping and that sense of that community as well is really important as well. Keeping people active. Matthew.
Yeah, just briefly. Yeah, in common with a lot of corporations, we're encouraged to donate a couple of volunteer days. So all staff get 2 or 3 days to volunteer. So most of the wildlife initiatives are run through that. So we've reached out to our local wildlife trust, Basingstoke, and we've had teams of people going out porpoising and building dead hedges and things like that. But also to Steve's point about know your strengths. I mean, we're an animal health company, so a lot of the initiatives are related to donkey sanctuaries and riding for the disabled and supporting. So yeah, we're using our corporate volunteering program to run most of those initiatives.
And do you get good uptake on that program, or do you have to really sort of push people to take the time?
It really depends on the opportunity. So if there are and all the opportunities are employee led, so the company doesn't create these opportunities. People are encouraged to say, look, I've got this local charity, and then they reach out. So I guess it depends on the opportunity. So some are more popular than others. I would say most staff engage in it, whether everybody uses their full 2 days a year. I would be less confident of. We do track it, and it is something that I report in our sustainability report, the number of volunteer hours. But there is certainly a push from the lead team for people to get out, get their volunteers hours up, but it's certainly not mandatory.
Brilliant, thank you. Sara.
first time. So one of the new things we're doing now is we choose every year 2 projects to support, either with time or with donations, whatever the circumstances allow for. And one is like a one-off thing for that year, and the other one should be a continuous project that we will be engaging with throughout the year. Our one-off this year was voted to be, the winner was Wildlife Vets International. This was made in form of a donation, because that's what they were asking at the time that we engaged with them. And they are a British charity which has been providing veterinary support to international wildlife and conservation projects. And what the reason why we thought it was so nice is that not only they do that, so to try and go there and sort some sort of problem that is occurring at that time, but they do transfer of knowledge by educating the local communities, which are not necessarily vets, but people that want to be involved, and some of them would be vets as well, so that they can then continue when they go away. They can continue to put in practice as best they can those practices, and so that they can take that conservation effort and have a long-term impact. So that was our engagement with biodiversity this year. Yeah.
Brilliant. In fact, I mean, it gives me a perfect opportunity to mention we did a webinar with Wildlife Vets International earlier on. I'm lost in the year, but it was sort of March time or April time, something around the Big Give, actually, the big sort of charitable initiative that doubles donations, links sort of philanthropists with charities and kind of ramps up donations. But and they are a fantastic organization, sort of, and every penny counts for them. And if you look at the biodiversity indexes, it's the wild animals who are really under threat. So an important place to go. We're going to run. I can't get my reporting question in because we've had such full and brilliant answers from you all. I'd like to finish in the same order that we started, and just with your sort of top tip for as we sort of leave today's session. So I'll start with Anne, if you can.
I think demonstrate that everybody can play a part, whether it's small or large. It can be to participate in recycling, check your printing, car share, use DocuSign instead of paper. I mean, so many things. Use your volunteer days, but just demonstrate to people continually that they can participate.
Excellent. Matthew?
Try lots of different things. Not everything will work, but celebrate your successes.
Brilliant. Yes, that's so true, that not everything is perfect, is it? And you might have you might come across some obstacles in the way, and but keep trying and try other ones. Sara?
So I think this might be a bit enhanced in a remote company, because we need to make a bigger effort to really try and understand how people are feeling, because we're not face to face. So there's a lot of things that can maybe be lost. But it's important also in an office environment, just ask for feedback and really listen to what's being said. In our case, we do this 3 ways: informal conversations, both casually if they spontaneously occur in calls, but also we have asynchronous channels dedicated to sustainability matters, whatever people want to stay brainstorm, like a Slack channel just for that. And we have an interactive board where we put ideas for our action plans, stuff like that. We are obviously digitally veered people, so that's easy for us, but you can find your own ways to do this. And then finally, and I think this is a very important one, anonymous polls. So we can ask about numerous things. How are you feeling now? What would you like to do? Is this working for you? Are you being able to keep this going? So this is really important, and try to actually act on the things that were said. And when those things are not possible, also talk about it. Don't just pretend, oh, we could do this one, we talked about it, we publicized, then we pretend we forgot, that one doesn't exist. No, talk about it. Sometimes things are not possible, sometimes due to either the nature of the business itself, and people will be understanding. People will be fine with that. And if you talk about it, say, listen, this is why we cannot do this at the moment, or maybe never, but they will know that you didn't forget, you didn't ignore it. For example, we've done this with one of my polls was focusing, how are you feeling in your work? What things would you like to change? And I asked the question about reduced working hours, and everyone was very excited about it, of course. And so we considered a 4-day work week, but because our team is so small, no one is replaceable. So that wouldn't quite cut it, because we have to be in contact with office hours because of the nature of the business and our clients. So we came up with an alternative, and we said, listen, this is why we cannot do this. But we thought about it, and we thought we could maybe do a 4.5-day work week. I developed a weird rota that would, alternative rota that would work for everyone. Not everyone would always have the Friday afternoon free. We would rotate and everything. And everyone is really, really happy. We've been trialing, and it's now like been a full year, and we never stopped. So yeah, ask, listen, and then either act on it or find an alternative or explain why some things cannot be done, and keep brainstorming and find new things to do.
Well done, brilliant. Yes, that important sort of something we haven't touched on, but of course, sort of employee well-being and really looking after your staff is an increasingly important element of being a sustainable company.
Can I just add something really, really quick that I forgot, but it's obviously very important and key for this. It might not sound a lot, but apart from the social aspect and employee satisfaction, even company productivity, it might not sound like a lot, but half a day less for 48 work weeks, counting with everyone 2 week of holiday and the Christmas break, and for 7 employees, 7 people counting with the CEO, compounds to 1,344 less hours per year using all of this equipment, using all of this, power, and online conversations and producing and developing and using, this energy and this lightning and maybe the heating that you would be using in your office and all of this. So then we are able to look into that and start grabbing at least an idea of what the impact is, but it's thousands and thousands of hours that you are saving also on environmental impact. So that's also a key thing for this.
Yeah, no, exactly. No, good. I'm sure the 4-day working week is something that sort of lots of businesses are doing it, aren't they? But it's going to become more normal. Grace?
Mine is a super simple one. Something that I've found really helpful is putting a kind of regular diary entry in my diary for kind of green actions, because I think otherwise it's really easy for things to get bumped if you've got your kind of day job and your other priorities that people are chasing you for all the time. And it's just also been good for me to kind of keep momentum up within the team. So if in that slot I'll kind of chase actions or check in with working group or send out kind of an all staff message just to kind of keep people up to date or encourage them to print less or whatever it is. I think it's helped kind of keep momentum in the forefront of everyone's mind. So yeah, a very simple one, but just having something in the diary that commits time for green actions has been really helpful.
Brilliant. Good tip. I like the top tip. And we'll finish with, we'll go back up to the northeast and finish with Steve.
Right, I'll go with 4, right? Dead clear, dead simple.
Okay.
Get support from the top, get the board involved so they know what you're doing. Get ideas and feedback from the staff so they feel they're on the journey. Broadcast your success stories and your milestones. And tap into guys from Invest Environment to give you support, because without Joe Holmes and the team, I would still be looking for where to start and what to do. That's my big 4. Use what you've got in front of you, but also make sure the board and that know. So that's my 4.
Fantastic. Well, what a great note to end on. And you're so right about that communication thing. That's another. We need to come back, don't we, and discuss all this. I've still got a raft of questions that we haven't got through. You have been brilliant. So thank you so much. And you know what? It's we can say these things, but it's so much more valuable coming from our members. So thank you for your time. Really, really appreciate it. And let's keep in touch. And until the next time. Goodbye.
Thank you.